going like, I have better ones, and then just leaving.
This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what was put in the brochure. The pamphlet clearly shows a double McWhopper.
Hey YouTube, welcome back to our channel. My name is Elena.
And I'm Bjorn.
And we are Viking Age reenactors and living historians here to talk with you about your favorite Viking Age shows.
First things first, we got a new couch. It is comfortable, and it is large, and most importantly, it is not broken. We are almost done with The Last Kingdom. We're so close to the finale. I'm not going to drag it out any longer. Let's get going with this. I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of that first scene. I felt like that was really beautiful and like really well done in terms of like what they were trying to do, because it was really cool to see like Aethelflaed's like ceremony, kind of taking the throne, where they almost pose it as kind of reminiscent to like a wedding.
A little bit, yeah.
Which was really nice to see, and it makes sense because she is a Mercian maiden. Getting married to the throne. So it was very nice to see that kind of like symbolism with, the floral crown, like headdress, and like her, hair undone, because traditionally, like unmarried women would let their hair be unbound. And then kind of her fresh approach with like these beautiful, clean, light, flowy, sun-like garments, and people like throwing flower petals and stuff. So it's all very like festive and like symbolizing fertility and like the height of growth and everything. So it was very like prosperous time for everything. It was just really nice to see, especially because she said that she would take no suitors while she was reigning over the throne.
Yeah.
So
and she had to let Uhtred go and everything.
Yeah, well. and so again, just that kind of duality between like her promise for remaining chaste, as well as like her submission or bequeathment to the throne itself. So it's like she's marrying the kingdom, which is really great to see.
Would you like to fight or to yield? Yield.
So that just happened.
Very little resistance on their end, to be honest with you.
Yeah, like I get that they like did it quickly and without warning and stuff, but like this is the capital of Wessex and like the seat of the king. Like you'd think just by default there'd be people on guard.
I mean, obviously there were, some guards there that could have done something, and it seemed like none of them really wanted to. Great showing of chainmail not protecting against arrows, I'll say it, because I think what was it last week, we were talking about the different types of chainmail that there was, and the fact that they were using the butted chainmail that could come apart much quicker when shot with an arrow. So could have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest obstacles for chainmail is going to be those tiny little piercing things like arrows or spears. So absolutely, yeah, brilliant to do.
If you would turn to Christ, perhaps I could find a way to reward you properly.
I shall go unrewarded. I will not pretend a faith I do not have.
My husband saw things in Uhtred none of us understood.
Lady, we all understood it. I think it was just you that didn't.
Just tearing into her.
This entire season has been great when it comes to that.
I don't have to be nice to you anymore.
There was a topic from last week that we didn't quite cover. The topic of baptism. So last week we saw Uhtred baptized so that he could take the Mercian throne, essentially. And it was his third baptism. They wouldn't take the first two into account because he was a child and has since then been a Dane. And that actually happened quite a lot, not in terms of people taking the throne necessarily, but say when Alfred was making his agreement with Guthrum for the Danelaw, one of the biggest stipulations for him was that Guthrum be baptized and take on a Christian name, and he became known as Aethelstan after that. Without that, they wouldn't have had Danelaw. And the same thing with, with trading, with being in Christian countries in general. They always, always, always wanted people to be baptized in order to do any business with them.
Baptism was often a stipulation for any kind of peace agreement or any kind of treaty between the Christians and the heathens, not only just because they wanted them to accept God into their life and save their souls, yada, yada, yada. It was also used as a stipulation to basically stop the raids from continuing. The hope was that by the Norsemen being baptized and becoming Christians, they would then cease raiding on Christian territory, and that was something that was kind of explained to them as well. It kind of went hand in hand to say, okay, well, now that you're with the baptismal, you have to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior into your life, and you have to basically follow the code of conduct that we have in place, which is that you can't attack and raid Christian settlements anymore because they are your people as you are now a Christian. And that was often the result of many large-scale raids and peace treaties. Like you see it with the Danelaw in England. You see the same thing with Rollo in Normandy as part of getting the territory of Normandy to settle. And you also see it when the Vikings tried to invade Paris as well. They had various peace agreements there, and one of them was that the Viking chieftain, the leader who was leading the raid, had to get baptized. And with that, they had a big ceremony, made a whole festive day out of it, and anybody else who wanted to get baptized could also get baptized. And the Vikings took that formally, and some of them did become Christian, and others became Christian, quote unquote, which leads into one of my ultimate favorite stories about the Vikings. It's hilarious.
So much.
Who's gonna tell it? Because we both love the story.
That's a great question.
2 out of 3. Two out of 3. 2 in a row. Yes. All right. So, during one of the raids on Paris, part of the peace agreement was that the Viking chieftain had to become baptized in order to brokerage a peace and settle the war, basically. And with that, any of the other Norsemen, any of the other Vikings in his warband who wanted to be baptized would be baptized. There was this whole celebration, there was this whole ceremony into it of saying the words, getting dunked in the water and being blessed. And as part of it, you were given ceremonial robes, these very nice white linen robes. And as the day progressed, they actually had to stop baptizing people because some of the Vikings took it upon themselves to keep getting baptized. And it was discovered that they were running a scam because they realized every time they get baptized, they'd get a new set of garments, of brand new, very white, clean, pretty vestments and robes. So they would go around and get baptized over and over and over again so they could keep getting new clothes. And there were dudes just hoarding 7 of these, just trying to hide them or wearing them proudly to be I've been baptized 4 times. Well, I've been baptized 7 times. I only got baptized twice. I'm really lagging. I'm falling behind. So they were just yeah, baptize me. Sprinkle the water. Give me the robes. I want the robes. Because they were valuable. And then they had to stop baptizing them because they were okay, you guys aren't taking this seriously. This is real. This is God. And they were okay. Give me the robe.
I think I also heard as part of that, they had actually started running out of the linen robes. So they had the seamstresses that were creating them making them as quickly as they could, except for the quality degraded because they were making them as fast as they could. So eventually you had Vikings coming up to get baptized, taking these robes that were kind of made haphazardly out of whatever material they could throw together at the time and going like, I have better ones, and then just leaving.
This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what was put in the brochure. The pamphlet clearly shows a double McWhopper.
And that's a little bit about baptisms in the Viking Age.
Listen to that. Pig squeal. What do we do? Tie them.
Did you catch the line about the pig squealing?
Yeah, oh, how the pigs squeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a callback to Ragnar's poem that he spoke before he died.
It's basically like, oh, how the pigs will squeal when, like, they hear how, you know, the boar was treated or how the boar gets killed or something like that. But it's basically just, like, an allusion to, like, how they're going to react after hearing of it. So it's, I draw to that as well.
Yeah, and in Ragnar's case, he was saying it as a way to say that his sons were going to avenge him and bring on the army after he's dead, which they did.
Yep.
So this is kind of a callback to that, and I'm wondering if that's really going to mean anything moving forward.
No, we'll have to see.
I get to Winchester at last. Do not look on it. It's not the place they left. I'm not a Christian.
I was noticing when they were coming in, the heads that were up on the pikes at the gates, that was a pretty well-known tactics that the Vikings used in their raids to basically scare their enemy, and it was just kind of cool to see it here.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's something, it's kind of like a stereotypical, like, medieval thing that you hear about, you know, like, head on spike, to just, like, show, like, terror and put the fear into people. But, yeah, I mean, the Vikings were known to do that. So, I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm. It's not necessarily like a Viking-specific thing, but they absolutely took advantage of it. So, as the Vikings were traveling through Paris, or through Francia, but modern-day Paris, after one decisive victory, they actually strung the heads of their enemies into, like, the rigging of their ships.
Right.
And so, like, as they would sail their ships down and, like, be seen by other forces, they'd have the gory, disgusting, half-rotted heads just, like, hanging from their ships to just, like, instill fear and terror into their enemies and kind of break their morale before the battle even happened. And you also hear about them kind of throwing heads over battlements and barricades as well, kind of like into the defending army, essentially. Just, again, like a promise of, like, this is what's coming for you.
Yeah, basically it's like a show of force.
Yeah, and I mean, by all intents and purposes, I mean, the idea can kind of be attributed to many people at the time, but the Vikings definitely could be seen as terrorists of the Dark Age, of the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of fits into their tactic well of just, it's all about kind of terrorizing your opponent and breaking their will to fight before the battle happens. Because if you're able to do that, you've already won the battle. So they would absolutely take kind of any means that they could to put that fear of death or that fear of the Vikings into them.
I wonder if we're going to see some proper berserkers.
Have we in this show?
I don't think so.
I don't think we have either.
No.
This incursion will not be tolerated. My son will burn us all to the ground before he concedes 1 square of Wessex land.
Half dame is enough. Hold the young woman separately.
She's Uhtred's daughter.
I recognize her. Committed mercy when my sister betrayed me.
Why have they strengthened their defenses? They could be preparing for a siege. I thought the Danes did not like sieges. Yes.
I like the fact that he said that the Danes don't do sieges. That the Vikings don't do sieges. Because they didn't, unless they were forced into it.
Yeah, they really didn't want to.
The Vikings were all about kind of touch and go. They land, they raid, they leave. until the Great Heathen Army, of course, and they stayed, but even still, sieges were not something that they liked to do, that they were equipped to do a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they only really did it when they had to.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely not something that they excelled at. It wasn't really a strategy that kind of like fit how they raided, because it's the antithesis of raiding. The whole point of a raid is to go there quickly without warning, strike, attack, take what you can, and leave before the enemy can surmount a defense. And then by that time, you're already 2-3 days away.
Exactly.
So this idea of siege warfare, this pitched battle, was kind of something that was a little bit, it wasn't necessarily foreign to them, but it definitely wasn't really something that they excelled at or they kind of wanted to commit themselves to. So you don't really see it happen all too often. And that's also why a lot of times the Vikings didn't take cities necessarily. They didn't like hold on to them. They'd take over them, they'd sack the place, they'd burn things, they'd loot it, or they'd come to some kind of treaty and a peace agreement, and then they'd just take what they came for and leave. It was less detrimental for them to do that than to try to hold on to it and wait for somebody to come and surround them and attack them, and they would have then no retreat.
Right.
So, are you one of us or one of them?
I'm both. There's a many living here, 2 generations, 3. It's foolishness of who is Saxon and who is Dane.
The Saxon cares only for obedience to their god.
Then you know nothing of Saxons. They treasure honor as much as you do.
So, on the topic of Danes getting along with Christians. So, she's talking here about how she's basically second generation of, this Danelaw being a thing and heathens and Christians coexisting together and everything like that. And something that I don't think we had touched on before or hadn't really talked about before is how the religions kind of ended up not merging together. Although we could get into the whole, how did they merge together and, the effects of heathenry on Christianity that eventually happened, and maybe we can get into that a little bit more later on. But one of the things that I've always found interesting is how there came a point where certain heathens did accept Jesus into their beliefs, essentially. It's just the way that they did it was a little bit hilarious, because they accepted him, but they accepted him as one of the gods of the pantheon. So along with Odin and Thor and Tyr, and Freya and everyone else, they just put him up there, and he just became another one of the gods.
Yeah.
To which the Christians were like, no, that's not what we meant.
It's not how it works.
By believing in the God, and they were like, no, what are you talking about? He's right up there. We believe in him.
Yeah, look, we worship him, we pray to him. Yeah, we leave him offerings, we sacrifice stuff to him. No, you're not supposed to do any of that. Yeah, and that wasn't necessarily a universal thing, but we do know about it, especially in the Danish court, of Jesus Christ kind of just being accepted as another deity, though a lesser one. He was kind of worshipped side by side with Thor and Odin and Frey and everybody else. And so there was that slow kind of integration, that slow development of introducing Jesus Christ into their lives and then trying to get them to realize that there's only the one, and move on from that. But yeah, just that slow religious development. One thing that we kind of do have some idea of is that a lot of the modern days that we have set aside in the calendar for certain saints or things like that, they're representative, or they have very similar iconography or symbolism that can be tied into and kind of mirrored in old pagan beliefs. So it's kind of almost like a Christianized whitewashing of their faith eventually over time, to have these lesser minor gods and important holidays and sacraments kind of replaced and reupholstered essentially with this Christian facing onto things. And again, yeah, that's something that we can go into way more in depth.
That is a big topic.
I need a whole day to get it all out, you know. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of crossover that we do see kind of going on through between the heathens and the Christians, and that's bound to happen in any society where there's two distinct cultural groups that coexist together and intermarry, and share those identities.
That was great. Where were you? What do you think?
I demand you make him stop this.
Why?
This is clearly wrong. It's a sacrilege.
I just want to point out that I love that she's doing this while like pregnant. Like she just like had such like a cocky strut about her and just like bulging.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. It's so cool to see.
By dawn, tomorrow you will be surrounded! Surrender now! And avoid being massacred! All back, Trigger fights another way. We need a better plan. Listen to me! Do not do this! Attack!
He had it right. He's an idiot. Stupidest king.
Folks, after all of this time, I think we all know if Witcher tells you not to do something, you don't do it.
Anyways, it was kind of like a straightforward episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, next episode will be the freeing of Winchester, and we'll see what's gonna happen with our main characters. I'm calling it now, Bree is gonna give birth in the middle of battle.
And she's right, too.
She's basically there.
Yeah. To my knowledge, at this point, like, the Vikings never really took Winchester. It was, like, the seat of the throne. And so if it was taken, it would mean that they'd have Wessex, basically, you know? I'm going to say that they never did it. I don't know specifically. I'll go out on a limb and just admit that. But I'm pretty confident this battle didn't happen. I feel like if it did, I would know more about it. You know what I mean?
Right. So this would be purely just the Last Kingdom.
Yeah, this is purely just. Yeah, this is just for the plot. And to give Sigtryggr like a reason to exist in the storyline.
I guess. I mean, they brought him in. They may as well have him do something.
Yeah.
While he's here.
Pretty much. The whole thing with Sigtryggr is that like his goal isn't like, you know, the conquest of the Vikings necessarily. Like, he's not in this for any kind of like just glory and vengeance. Like, that's not his ideology here. He's completely unknown, like, as Uhtred keeps pointing out, a guy with no reputation. And then he's like trying to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out about Uhtred and like through his daughter and understand like how to bring the people together and like what's better, to be loved or feared, you know? So it seems like he's kind of setting things up for like damning the past Viking leaders for their bullheadedness and kind of trying to take like a new approach. So
I do like his character, honestly.
Yeah, I was questionable at first, but he's grown on me a bit.
Yeah, I don't think there's really too much more to say. Like, we hit some other talking points in here, and yeah, like you said, it was a pretty straightforward episode. It seems like it's kind of obviously picking up a little bit for that season finale, from the last 3-4 episodes that have been a little bit more
stagnant.
I wouldn't say stagnant, but definitely like more mellow and just moving pieces around and you know, shuffling the board. This is definitely starting to pick back up again, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yep. What did I give it last time? Like an 8? Yeah. I feel like I'm back down to like a 7. Just more in the comfortable standard territory that I've kind of had the show in for most of it. They're keeping a pretty steady consistency with everything. I really enjoy it. I like the storyline. Everything's still really well written and well driven, well motivated. Their characters are really unique and very, like, not personable necessarily, but like they're very representative of that kind of Dark Age mindset, I feel like. You know, with the dichotomy of that standard Viking that we've always seen, as well as mixing that in with Sigtryggr's new character, and then You know, the old former queen coming back and being like, hellfire will rain down upon you. You know, kind of just that like brutal Christian mentality as well. I really dig it. So I'm gonna say 7. You know, because it's bringing that down a little bit. You know, reining it in, and like, you know, the Battle of Winchester, as far as I know, didn't really happen at all. And again, it's more just for storyline than anything else. But I think they're doing a pretty good job of everything. But regardless, same arguments as beforehand. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I would actually agree, honestly. I know that last time we gave it pretty high marks for Aethelflaed's peak of the storyline and everything, and we saw part of the coronation at the very beginning here. They didn't show too much. It was just she was coordinated. Let's move on to some other stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the same reasons that you said, they're still doing a good job, so I'm not gonna drop it down too far. But yeah, I mean, as far as this episode is concerned, I think a 7 is a good rating for it.
Yeah.
In terms of its accuracy.
Agreed. Great job, guys.
Cool.
Doing well. Don't let me down.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified of our future videos. And we will see you in the next one.